We got Roger and Jim, I think, coming in now. They're coming in as the staff. Stephen? Stephen? Hello?
I'm here.
Hey, Roger. Jim's on, Rogers, and Brian's with me.
Oh, okay. Great. Hey, guys.
We're going to mute us, though.
We're going to mute you because we're in a restaurant.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we haven't started the broadcast yet. There currently are no attendees.
Sorry about that, sir. Yeah, we have a Chipotle chicken today, which would be a cream-based soup, a spicy black bean with
Hey, Roger Pickett.
Yes, sir.
Have you done the *1 to open the meeting up yet, or no?
I have not.
Okay.
Should I do that?
You started the no.
Started the recording,
You mentioned you started the recording.
Yeah, I did do that just to make sure I didn't forget.
Okay, that's fine.
So you might have some extra stuff in front that you don't want.
That's fine. I'll edit that out.
I can stop it and start it over again when we start.
Don't worry about it. Just less is more at this point.
We have an attendee, but fortunately or unfortunately, it's Richard.
Now, do you still have presentation controls, Roger Pickett?
I do. I'm showing my screen. You should be seeing my screen.
I am. Try and go forward one. Okay, good.
So what do we do in the event that it's just us?
Well, the good thing is we're going to record this and send it out as an after email. People can access this online. So.
Okay. Should we start it knowing that it's just us?
Yeah, we would just start it on time.
Okay. You say when, and I'll start the broadcast.
We still got a few minutes. You got all your background stuff shut down?
Yep.
Dave Butchery.
All right, let's rock and roll.
Okay, getting ready to start. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Stephen Mullen. I'm going to facilitate today's webinar discussion, where we're going to talk about hidden costs and lurking exposure in your transportation operation. At the end of this webinar, we're going to carve out a few minutes to do some question and answers. So during the webinar, please feel free to submit questions via the toolbox to the right of your screen. And again, we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can once we're completed. Today, we're going to talk about hidden costs and lurking exposure. We've given it a Halloween theme to make it a little more fun, but in truth, it's a very serious topic with some costs and some risks that we need to understand, which we're going to talk about today. Today's presenter is this scary guy. His name is Roger Pickett. Roger's experience with logistics and distribution management spans more than 20 years and includes direct industry experience in food service, building materials, and baking, among other industries. He currently manages customer relations and daily customer operations for PTG Logistics. That said, Roger, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Stephen. And thanks, everybody, for joining. We'll get right into it. Transportation costs, pretty simple, right? You need drivers, so you have recruiting and compensation. Put an ad in the paper or put an ad online. Of course, you have a paycheck you have to pay the fellows. And then you have benefit costs on top of that. And you need a truck, the acquisition and maintenance of that truck. You can choose to full-service lease, or you can actually outright purchase a tractor. Then you have costs of maintenance and repairs to that. And of course, you have to buy fuel to operate it. Pretty simple, or is it? Let's break it down a little bit. Transportation costs for drivers. The average cost to replace a driver is over $8,000. Now, that includes the advertising, physicals, drug tests, background screening, time and management for hiring, and also the downtime for the tractor while the drivers are being hired and trained. Since 2012, driver turnover is at 89%. The changes to DOT hours of service requiring a 30-minute break will lead to increased driver shortage and reduced productivity over time. And the average healthcare plan is now between $15,000 and $17,000 annually, depending on your location. Work comp rates can vary anywhere between 7% and up to 14% or more, depending on your state, your experience, and the type of drivers. So what about trucks? Well, all right. Well, a new Class 8 tractor can easily exceed $120,000. New engines and systems now require specialized maintenance. Engine management technology, fuel management systems, and onboard computers require skilled technicians with skilled tools. There are full-service lease options, and they require a commitment and can range from approximately $1,800 a month to $2,500 a month, depending on the equipment and the use. There's also generally a cost per mile for maintenance, somewhere between 6.5 and 9 cents a mile. Typical lease term is 3 to 5 years. And there's fuel. Fuel cost is simple math, really. Let's assume $3.85 per gallon and assume that your equipment is getting 7 miles per gallon. That's 55 cents per mile. Now, of course, with the price of fuel varying and the different equipment possibly getting different fuel mileage, that can get better or worse dramatically. Now, fuel and labor rates are the biggest expense for a trucking company, and when you take that 55 cents assumed mile rate for fuel and you add in paying a driver to drive that tractor, you're quickly over $1 per mile without adding any expense in there for the equipment itself or managing it. A fuel management program is also essential. You could be in any different position with that. Maybe you have no program. Maybe you have an agreement with a single vendor and get a discounted rate at their location. Maybe you have a private tank and you buy fuel in bulk. Maybe you even outsource this to a third-party company to manage your fuel purchases for you, and they tell you where and when to buy it. And fuel tax reporting is another issue that has to be taken into account. Are you filing directly? Do you file electronically with onboard computers in your tractors? Do you depend on a full-service lease provider to file for you? Well, you have to understand that there are significant penalties for not filing or having missing information. So another area of cost. So transportation costs overall. People tend to oversimplify and often fail to recognize all of the costs included in transportation. We've discussed drivers, trucks, and fuel, but it's obviously a lot more complex than that. And I would ask, do you know what your true cost of transportation is? Let me move on to exposure. We know we have exposure, but what exactly is it? Well, obviously we have the CSA, Compliance, Safety, and Accountability. CSA is a scorecard program designed to improve safety and reduce crashes. It is implemented by the DOT. Workers' comp, drivers being injured in accidents while driving down the road. So that's our exposure. I think it's certainly a little bit more complicated than that. Let's look into it. First, the CSA. The CSA is broken down into 7 basics. Those are categories that are graded, and they are unsafe driving, hours of service, driver fitness, controlled substance and alcohol, vehicle maintenance, hazmat, and crash indicator. Now, your score is determined by activity, either a lot of activity, as in getting DOT inspections, or no activity, or passing those inspections regularly. The DOT sets a threshold for each basic, so you have a score, both for the company and the individual driver. Now, as that score gets into a range that is determined to be elevated, you'll go into an alert status potentially. And with that alert status, the carrier could wind up with more scrutiny on roadside inspections, and the driver could certainly wind up with increased scrutiny, on scale inspections. If you go too far into that and wind up with a red alert, they certainly may come to your facility and conduct a full DOT audit, which can be intense. Now, it's very simple to get behind in these scores. You have a few things here and there, but getting back on track is very difficult because there is a time limit to it, and your scores will not be reduced until you have no activity or no violations over a certain period of time. And another issue with the CSA is it's public. Most of these categories can be viewed by anybody who knows your DOT number or your MC number. And that's easily accessible through a Google search and could include potential customers, insurance companies, potential employees, and even the DOT itself. So let's have a little fun with workers' comp. We'll do it as a math equation. So we'll take an aging workforce plus long hours plus a poor diet minus exercise. What do we get? We get the highest risk of on-the-job injury of any occupation. And that is a frightening thought. So workers' comp, a little bit more detail of the exposure there. 1 out of 13 drivers will miss time due to a work-related injury. That's 1 out of 13. Many injuries will occur in another state, and those regulations in those states may vary as far as workers' comp is concerned. Now, if you have a driver who's out driving, he's making deliveries, and he winds up injured, he could be far away from home. Certainly, you have concern for the employee, and you want to do what's right by them. You have product on the truck. You have equipment out there. And there's tremendous costs involved with all of those issues, not just trying to get the driver healthy and back to working, being productive, but getting somebody out there to relieve him and move this equipment and this product. Now, the most common injuries are slips, trips, falls, sprains, and strains from basic activities. You know, we think of drivers getting injured typically, and it's driving down the road and they're involved in moving violation accidents, or something happens to the equipment. And that's certainly a concern, but the reality is most of these injuries are drivers getting out of the tractor after driving 4 or 5 or more hours at a time. They're stiff. They miss a step. Foot hits the ground and their knee blows out. Or they go to an area and it's icy. They step out, they slip on the ice. They climb out of the back of the trailer and get hurt. They have back sprains. It's more of that than it is the actual extreme violent wrecks that you kind of think of. And the average cost of a workers' comp claim for a truck driver is $65,000. $65,000 is the average cost for a work comp claim for a truck driver. That's a big number. So how do we determine where you are? You started as a manufacturing company. Where are you now on the transportation scale? You need to look at your level of investment, your level of focus, and your management investment to determine where you are. We can use the key areas that I've listed above to help with that. We have CSA management. Somebody has to be watching the scores and managing that. We have managed fuel program. How do you buy fuel? Where do you buy fuel? Who do you buy it from? Training and compliance program. You have logs. You have DOT files that need to be maintained. Backhauls. Are you doing intercompany backhauls, bringing your own product in? Are you doing third-party backhauls to try to mitigate the empty mile expense for your fleet? If you are you making money on those? Or are you running more out of route and incurring costs that don't cover the expense of doing it? Equipment purchase program. Do you own your own equipment, or have you chosen to lease your equipment? What kind of lease obligations do you have? Is your equipment aging? Route optimization. If the best mode of transport for your cargo, are you shipping it on your own freight, on your own trailers just because they're there? Should you be using LTL? Should you be using line haul? Should you broker some of this out? Or is it best suited to be on your equipment? Do you have some type of software to help you with your route optimization? Do you regularly review your routes to make sure that they are optimized? Driver recruitment. Certainly there's a cost to that, as we've discussed before. So driver retention becomes a huge area of savings. We want to keep drivers in a good status and keep them on board. The safety program is essential. You will not make it without a safety program. A maintenance program. If you own your tractors and trailers, then obviously you're going to have a detailed, robust maintenance program. If you are leasing, full-service leasing your equipment, you still have a maintenance program. You're just going to be utilizing the vendor to handle that maintenance for you. Then there's tires, and I added that because tires generally don't fail close to home. So there's an extreme expense to them, and they have to be managed accordingly. So where are you? I've created a scale here with 3 different options or 3 different segments that I think companies fall into. You could be in the basic category where you've made a limited investment, you're operating with high risk and transportation costs that can be reduced significantly. Typically, these are smaller fleets, 2 to maybe 5 tractors, and you really don't have a fuel program at this point because you don't have the volume to go out and leverage that. And you have limited management direct to your transportation needs because many folks are wearing many different hats. You have no onboard computers, and a lot of times drivers prefer to do manual logs, even in this day and age, because sometimes, unfortunately, it allows them to kind of skirt the rules. Are you in the moderate category? I would say you've made an investment in some areas, but not all of them. You still have exposure risk and cost reduction opportunities. I would categorize these companies as larger companies with 15 to 25 units. You're still probably routing manual because it's grown into that. You really don't have a backhaul program, but you'd sure like to look into that. And you likely have leased equipment that you have to manage with a single vendor. And there are the companies out there that I would consider advanced. These companies have made a decision to invest in complex transportation-related areas. For example, they're typically a for-hire private fleet. They're basically managing their transportation as a 3PL. They're doing a lot of interaction with internal and external brokerage. They might be self-insured, at least to a point. And they've made a major equipment investment. So where's your balance between the core business and your transportation? What are you? A manufacturing company or a transportation company? Where's your focus? What keeps you up at night? Are you focusing on making a better product? Are you focusing on innovative ways to keep production lean and drive cost out of that? Or are you worrying about trucks and drivers and deliveries? Are you experiencing private fleet creep? This is a term that I use to explain when people have a set amount of equipment, they will take their cargo and make it fit that equipment instead of the other way around. If you are never finding yourself short on tractors and or trailers, you probably have too many tractors and or trailers, and that can be very costly. Are your routes and delivery methods truly optimized? Again, the best mode of transportation for your deliveries. Do you deliver to outlying customers just because that's what you've done? Is there a better way to do it? Is there an LTL option? Is there a line haul option? Is there a brokerage option that needs to be looked at and addressed? Do you have any software needs? There are companies out there such as Appian and even Roadnet and several others that offer dynamic routing that can certainly be utilized to help make your routes more efficient and less costly. So at the end of the day, is transportation making or costing you money? It's really what we want to get to. Managing your transportation. What's best for your business? Well, we've determined transportation is a critical function of your business. As we've seen today, transportation comes with complex, inherent, and sometimes unforeseen risks and costs that need to be managed. And one of the ways that I look at this is, if our trucks were school buses, would we put our kids on our trucks? And when I look and talk to our drivers, that's what I keep in mind. And when I look and examine our equipment, I keep that in mind. And if it doesn't meet that test, then I need to fix it. So wherever you are on the scale, you certainly have a choice. You may decide you need to control costs better. And you can do that through efficiencies, maybe less equipment. Sometimes that even turns into better service. You may need to manage your risk better. That same efficiency can help manage your risk because you're actually spending less time on the road. You could have better training, better safety, and your experience level may go up. It also allows you to focus more on your core competencies, like manufacturing or whatever product that you may be building or selling. And regardless, you certainly have a path to put the necessary processes in place and even divest yourself of whatever investment that you've already made in transportation. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Stephen Mullen for some questions and answers.
All right, thank you, Roger. That's great stuff. As promised, we wanted to leave a few minutes to answer some questions that came in as Roger was giving the webinar presentation. And actually, the first one, Roger, tails on to a point you made near the end there. We've got a question: if I'm in the moderate category, how would I get out of transportation if that's what we wanted to do? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there are a few different ways that you can get yourself out of the cost and exposure and maybe improve. You could certainly look at a dedicated contract carriage company. You could go with a third-party management company to maybe manage your freight outbound and inbound. You could look into brokerage. Maybe your freight could be brokered. Somebody comes in and delivers it, and you have a management staff on hand or an outside company management, or likely a combination of all of those. Generally speaking, it takes a lot of different tools in the toolbox to achieve the goals and the cost structure that you want to have while keeping the service at a level that you need.
All right. A second question that came in was from a point you made earlier. It says you mentioned the average cost of replacing a driver is more than $8,000. Where did you get that number?
Okay. Actually, I got that number from a study that was done, and I actually read it in Transport Ethics, quite frankly. But I actually did a lot of research on this, and there were studies that were all over the board. Certainly, that's an exact number that obviously can't be applied to every single company. Larger companies, smaller companies, they have different resources. It costs a different amount of money to do that. I took an average number. I had results that were anywhere between $4,000 and $16,000, and just kind of narrowed that down to the one research guide that seemed to fit most of the companies that I thought we would be speaking to, and that's where I took that number from.
All right, and then the last question that came through goes back to the 7 CSA basics you talked about, and it's asking which ones can the public see?
Oh, okay. The public can see 5 of the 7 basics. They cannot see the hazmat basic or the crash indicator basic. And they can see the unsafe driving score, the hours of service score, your driver fitness, your controlled substance, alcohol, and your vehicle maintenance score. And all of those, the details can certainly be found on their website of what they entail. But those are all public. Anybody with, your MC number or your DOT number or just somewhat familiar with the search option can go in and find that.
Okay, great. Well, those were the questions that came through that we wanted to get to. So that said, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. Just a reminder, if I didn't mention it before, that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website. Give us a day or so to put that in place. That's at ptglogistics.com. So feel free to review that. Again, this is the second in our series of webinars. So the first one is also available online, and please look for your invitation to the next one. And I'd like to thank Roger Pickett for being our presenter today. Again, I'd like to thank you for being here, and have a great day.